Hello, everybody. I'm Devin. Welcome, Christian. This is Christian Broderson. I am so grateful that you're willing to do this with me, my man. I appreciate you. We know each other from having met in college at UC Santa Cruz. And truth be told, this gentleman here is probably the only reason I have a bachelor's. So my hat is off to you. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you. We both have I like putting the tria because Isabella made this label right front and center. We both have a great passion for skiing, and that's something that we've been able to connect on. And I'll just tell the real quick story real fast before I kind of turn the mic over to you, Christian, because I think it's a beautiful story, and it's something that I won't soon forget. That is, I walked into one of our earth science classes when we were maybe,
I think it was a mathematics and earth sciences or some multivariable calculus or something like that.
It was a difficult class, that's to be sure. It was really in the weeds with mathematics. That's right, I remember that. But I had other classes in that same room too, so my memory isn't the best. I also smoked a lot of pot, so that probably factors into the calculus of my memory as well. But I saw you with your computer open, your laptop open in the back of the class, with the Kirkwood Mountain ski forecast on it, looking at like the 5-day or the long range, I'm not sure, weather forecast. And literally, this is the thought process that came into my brain. We're going to be friends. And I just walked up and sat next to you and was like, what's up, man? You like to ski? You're like, yeah, what's up? And we hit it off, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that was the start of our friendship, and I'm honored to say that we've been good friends for a decade now, huh?
Has it been that long? What year is it? Where am I?
I know, right? It's almost 2021.
Yeah, I think it was about 2010. So yeah, 10 years ago. That's crazy.
Right. So welcome. Thank you very much for your time. Let's get right into it. The one thing that I'm tripping on while I'm looking on my computer is whether or not that's what I want. Do you see how now we're both side by side on the recording?
I already had you side by side.
Oh, I see. Because I've had some podcasts where, maybe this is wrong, because now it's just highlighting the one or the other.
You want gallery view instead of speaker view, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Where we see both instead of just
one. I'm in gallery view, and that seems to be the best.
Perfect. Okay, I'm glad, because that actually approximates a real conversation where we kind of both have our own space, as opposed to
it's a little weirder when when it pans back and forth between whoever's talking.
Right.
And then when you interrupt each other, it goes all nuts.
Yeah, one person's like,
really quick.
Yes, sir. Like even just at the interjection of, oh yeah, I agree, and then it pops the other person's face up, and yeah.
And then when we really start arguing, it's going to get real confused.
Dude, I know better than to argue with people that are smarter than me, and I count you amongst that ilk. So, cheers to you. Thank you very much for taking the time. And what's on your mind, man? I know that you are in recovery mode, so let's just let the people know that you are deep into recovery from knee surgery. So how's that going, first of all?
Well, it's going better or better than I could have hoped, just based on other people's stories. That I was in a lot of pain for 2 or 3 days after surgery, which was February 28th. So in a lot of pain for a couple of days, and then since then it's been pretty fine. I guess my surgeon did a really good job from what it sounds like.
So what was the injury exactly, and then what was the procedure that you had done?
It was a full ACL tear, and then what's called a bucket handle meniscus tear. So if you know what the meniscus looks like, it's like 2 C-shaped shock absorbers right in the middle of your knee. And then my medial meniscus, the bucket handle is kind of like, it's kind of like this crescent-shaped tear, and it's a bucket handle because it flipped over itself, like a handle of a bucket would. So my meniscus,
inside of the knee joint, it went like that.
Yeah,
Is
like
that
it
right?
ended up folding over itself and getting stuck like that, which is really tricky because like you can either put a bunch of stitches in it if it's in a certain spot where there's a lot of blood flow, and then it might heal up. Or if it's in what's called the white zone with no blood flow, they just have to take out your meniscus and leave you without it.
So you got lucky. You still
I
have
got
the
lucky.
shock absorber. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Uh,
so he ended up putting 9 stitches on that side of my meniscus, and then 1 stitch on the other side, on the lateral side, which he didn't even know about until he went in there.
so what is
Um,
the stitch just keeps it where it should be? Is that
yeah,
right?
it keeps it where it should be, and the blood flow eventually helps it to seal up nicely.
I see. I see.
And then the ACL tear, there's 2 options you can do with that, or there's 3 options, I guess. You can either get a cadaver for a new ligament, because ligaments don't repair themselves on their own, as you know.
Right.
So you can either get a cadaver, you can do what's called the patellar tendon, which I guess it's not really a spare part, but there's a little bit of extra there that you can take out and put somewhere else.
Okay. That's interesting.
We did not do that because I spend a lot of time in the summertime on my knees working, and so that would have hurt. And so the third option, which is what I did, he took a piece of my hamstring, of my outside hamstring, and then there's 2 little buttons above and below on my femur, and then on my tib fib.
Right.
And then he ties that new tendon on, or that new ligament onto that, and that's my new ACL.
Wow. So
And I got some sweet photos too, because I guess they put the scope in there and it actually took photos. So I can send you some photos of that if you want. It's pretty neat.
yeah, I'd love to, man. I've blown out my knees from running cross country as a little kid. They still click. Let's see.
Did you get surgery?
No, I just accepted the fact that I couldn't run after like sophomore year of high school. Like literally went from like a good runner, like I could run like straight up, like pretty close to a 5-minute mile pace for like 2-3 miles, to the point after sophomore year of high school, I couldn't run 200 yards without terrible pain in my knees. I would get inflammation from that.
So it wasn't like a discrete event. It was just, it got weaker over time.
Yeah, and I think that what damage I did to the knees was progressive, and then I would just get this massive inflammation. Like it wouldn't bother me like day to day, but then if I went hard, I would get, like, I remember one race in like freshman year of high school where I was competitive, and then that one I was like in the last 10th percentile. Like I was in the back of the pack, and I remember like running past my mom or something, and she's on the sidelines like, "Go get him!" And I'm just like, "No, dude, like the knees are not working."
Not
And
gonna happen.
you feel me? Ever after that, I would get massive inflammatory responses when I would exercise. And if I remember saying, and I don't even know what this is, but I remember saying to people, because it was the best like metaphor that I had. And again, it's not even like, I don't even know what it is. My knees felt like shatter boxes. My knees felt like just this thing that I call a shatter box, where if I like bumped it into something, just slight, like just a knock, just like a nice like little bump, like everything in it would just shatter. Like that's the feeling I had.
Running is rough on the knees. I've never really been into it.
Oh, what a and I had that springiness as a youngster because I was just a pair of lungs on a pair of legs. I used to have that first step where I was faster than everybody else, and man, I beat that right out of me. So what was the initial trauma that you did to the knee?
To me, so I was skiing at Kirkwood. Do you remember any of the names of those runs?
Some of them, yeah.
So saddle chute, kind of right in the saddle between chair 6 and 10 there. You take a left off of chair 6 and go down the ridge for a while, right?
Yes.
And then there's this little chute at the very top called the funnel, which is this kind of steep little shot with a little choke in the middle of it. So you have to point it to get through it. Picked up a little bit of speed, came out of it pretty hot, and hit a transition in the snow conditions, and I just hyperextended my left leg, and felt a pop. Just felt this like, oh man, that didn't feel good. Tried to make a couple of turns and said, forget it, like something's missing in there. So just skied down on one leg, and that was on January 19th.
How do you mean you just didn't let yourself set an edge on the other ski?
No, I traversed. I made like 5 long traverses all the way down. So I ended up like traversing all the way back to the top of chair 5, and then was able to take a groomer the rest of the way down.
Did you take your ski off of that leg?
No,
Just
no, I just lifted it off the ground
isn't it
because like
unbelievable?
there was still some adrenaline there, so like it wasn't too painful doing that.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I just on my YouTube I have suggested a video of Kurt Angle winning the like 90 something Greco-Roman I think wrestling Olympics with a broken neck. And what I was
Oh
gonna
God.
say is, isn't it unbelievable the the ability of the body to deal with extreme stress? Like
Yeah, physical and emotional.
right, right. It's only when we get into those places that we don't think we can deal with that we realize like you can deal with just about anything, right? Like when you have to, you can, you
Yeah,
know?
when you have to.
I like the company of people that either have been through no fault of their own or choose to experience difficult shit because they tend to be more chill, right? Like people who have been through terrible experiences, again, whether voluntary, maybe they're like an ultra marathoner or whatever, or just happenstance, maybe a person's been through some shit, and we all go through some shit eventually. So it's not like there's one group that is this and then the rest of people aren't that. But like, I just find that people that have been sheltered from those kinds of experiences or have in their psyche the idea that those kinds of like really painful things emotionally, psychologically, physically are like to be avoided are people that are just a fucking drag to be around. This is my opinion. And then
Yeah,
I
for sure.
think that you feel me? And then people that have been through the fire, where it's like, yeah, they can tell you stories and they've had really terrible things happen to them or have been knocked down. Those people have something to say. Like, you feel me? Those people can give you value. Those people are fuel, right? Like, you
It's
know what
kind
I
of
mean?
funny though, like if someone around me is reacting really strongly to something bad that happened or a difficult situation, it's really hard to explain how to settle down. Essentially, like just be like me. Like it's gonna be okay. But it's hard. Because it's not like you can impart your experience on them. You can just say, well, there's no point in getting wrapped up, wound up about it right now. But that doesn't really help that much. They're like, don't tell me to settle down.
Yeah, I've heard never in the history of humankind has telling somebody to calm down worked.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Just calm down. Just
Yeah.
calm down.
Yeah. Surely that'll help.
Fucking calm down. You fucking calm down. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Here's an interesting tangent. I contend that the idea of alchemy, right, and all of its occultness, esoteric weirdness, right? Like alchemy, well, that's people that were crazy that thought you could take tin and turn it into gold. That's silly. We've moved past that. We're technologically advanced. Those people were regressive dummies. They don't know what they're talking about. Or alchemy is a metaphoric representation of the ability to take a certain emotional substance and turn it into something more valuable, turn it into something.
Take a shit sandwich and make it taste better.
If you could do that, that would be worth a lot at the food truck, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I think that there's a lot of truth to that. And I think that we learn that whether we want to or not when we go through the shit. I do. I really do. Because there's a whole process that has been clearly delineated by the people that studied that body of knowledge that we in the Western world have just entirely cast aside, to the wonders of microprocessors and the physics that allow us to build large buildings and so forth. But this whole body of knowledge has been long, and I'm no fucking expert on it. I'm not going to sit here and lecture you. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I just think it's intriguing. But like, if you look into the Rosicrucians, if you look into like old like Masonic wisdom, and not in some weird like you got to be a part of a club to do it, but just in the idea of like when a person's broken down by trauma and then they come out the other side of that, there's a clearly delineated process. And again, I don't fucking know what I'm talking about. I just am intrigued by it. But it's like there's like, and I'm going to get this totally wrong, but there's like separation, distillation, coagulation, like sublimation, precipitation, and then like crystallization or something. I totally fucked that up.
Lost you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Resume. We are in gallery view. So if I'm in gallery view real quick, it says speaker view as if to say, click on this if you want to switch it to speaker view. It doesn't say
correct. Yeah, yeah. If you click on it, you're going to speaker view.
Understood, as an indication of what it is. All right. Well, welcome back. Christian is in Gardnerville.
Gardnerville.
Thank you, Gardner. Where is Garberville?
I've never heard of Garberville.
There's a Garberville. I think it's in Northern California. Up by
I was going to say that sounds something that's close to what's it called, Willits or something.
Yeah, I don't know where Willits is either. But I think
Northern California.
Yeah, in Northern California. But Christian, you're in Gardnerville, Nevada, and I'm in Bend, Oregon. And right now, even though it's the 5th of April, we're still having a winter. Praise Allah. So that's fucking
yeah. Winter just started a few weeks ago. Once everything shut down, winter showed up.
Yeah, straight up. As soon as this darn virus started tearing shit up, and everybody stopped polluting or what have you. I mean, I'm just being coy, but we got.
Did you hear that some cities in India are seeing the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years right now?
Is that right?
Pretty cool. Like 200 kilometers away, these people are seeing the Himalayas for the first time in a long time.
What a cool thing. That's fucking awesome. I've heard little anecdotes about the same function, like Venice, the canals are clearing up and being less polluted, the waters are running. I've seen videos of large groups of animals that have been kind of like on the outskirts of their, let's say legacy territory, like coming back in force. And interestingly, like, which flies into the face of the idea of all nature is harmonious, like gang wars of monkeys and like gang wars of otters and shit, like just straight up like 20 otters in like a canal or a river or what have you, like a waterway, just all like shoulder to shoulder. Like I look like fucking French sailor man right now, so I feel like, I can represent the otters. Like all just like paddling together, abreast, and then like another group just coming at them. It's on YouTube, and then just fucking.
I saw that. I'm really confused how this meeting gets organized. Like, yeah, like, they just all go look at each other and okay, let's go.
Well, that speaks to some deep shit, dude. Right? Like how animals communicate, because it's fallacy to say that they don't.
No, not at all.
Like, okay, so I was doing DoorDash yesterday, and I had a order of McDonald's, just a giant McDonald's bag and a fucking thing of 4 drinks for McDonald's. I knock on these people's door, and this little girl comes out, and it's a nice family. It's a beautiful house in a cul-de-sac, and they've got like a skateboard ramp in the front, and this little girl comes out. She might be 10. And I go, here you go, sweetie. Here, take this big bag of McDonald's. And then I had all the drinks too. So, she's like, got the bag like this, and she tries to take the drinks from me also. But it's 4 big fucking, gigantic McDonald's drinks. And so it's kind of top heavy. So I don't want to just give it to her because I'm scared it's going to fall. So she kind of gets one hand under it, and I go, well, hold on, make sure you got it. Don't let it fall. And then her kind of mom comes out, and she's behind her. At the same time as I'm bodied up with this little girl trying to give her the food for the family, 2 gigantic Rottweilers come out and flank me. They don't go behind me as if to like be in an aggressive stance. They don't try to like get into attack positions, but they take like, 3 and 9, like they get to where they've got me surrounded, right?
Into position.
And it happened as smooth as laminar water flows. You feel me? They didn't think about it. There was no call and response. There was no interest in what I was doing and like playing off that. they just got into position. I'm not kidding you. Both of these dogs was 100 pounds if it was a pound. Like big fucking animals, dude. Rotties, like with a head as big as mine, like just stout fucking dogs, right? And I'm not scared of dogs. I love dogs. I've had 2 dogs in my life. I absolutely love animals, you know. I think like an animal, frankly. So, you know, they come out and I give them my hands right away, right? Like, smell me, you know, like, here's my scent, like, it's all whatever, I'm here, you know. I felt in my chest that if I would have made any kind of like physical movement in a threatening way towards this little girl or her family in the slightest, those dogs would have closed the gap. They would have reciprocated. Okay, so I give them my scent. They're sniffing me, you know. They're not like we are, right? They're not neurotic. They don't have logic chain bullshit going on in their brain. They're just there. They're just there, 100%, right? And I give them the scent, and then I start walking away, right? And the gentleman, the head of the household is like, hey, you know, Spot and Cujo, and one of the dogs runs back in, but the other dog stays right on my hip, like a good dog that heals, right? Like right on my hip as I'm walking down the driveway to get back to my car. Okay, it's about halfway down the driveway with me, and I turn to have seen the other dog go back, and the gentleman is calling his dog to go back. And I swear to God, the only reason I tell the story is because it was really neat to have felt energetically what happened. Because I saw that the other dog left. I'm not scared of dogs, but I'm not an idiot, right? Like, I knew, no questions asked, I might be able to defend myself from one of those dogs. I might. Both of those dogs would have fucked me up, period. End of story. Unless I had a gun or a big fucking knife, it would have been game over, right? Okay, so I try to be a body of go back into the house, like, go ahead. And I kind of look at it, and the dad is yelling, you know, Cujo, 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 like louder. As soon as I like go from like he's walking me out to like go back, he looks straight at me, like not like, oh, I should go back, just looks at me as I turn to like go in. And as soon as I kind of give him that energy of like, you need to go in the house, right? As soon as this happens, he looks dead into my soul and just starts barking in that deep alpha Rottweiler bark. Like he's not advancing his position. He just goes, oh, like, and I'm just like, oh, like, this is real. Like, this dog could fuck me up. And the dad at that, like, all of this happened within the space of a half a second. The dad, in response to that, like, to this, and goes, Cujo, 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 like, yeah, like screaming, yelling for the dog to come in. And then I was like, oh, like, that dog doesn't give a fuck what I have to say. That dog doesn't care at all what I want it to do. That dog is going to protect that family. Period. Like, there's no other programs running on that murder machine. It's just, if I present any threat, it's going to meet that threat in kind. Right there, right now. And that was a powerful thing. So I think that these animals act on these circuits that we have as people, but we've built so much on top of that we forget the primacy of them. We forget how foundational it is to, I don't know, man, like be connected, grounded, like in a community, in a family or what have you, and like uphold that, like, energetically. So that's my little story. But I think that, like, these otters and things, like, you know, it all of that communication of we're gonna fuck that other group up can happen in the space of like 3 of us are here and we look that way, and that other one, instead of going like this, goes like this, and then it's like it's on.
It's not like us humans. We're gonna have a meeting and discuss our plans. You just look at each other and you know exactly what's gonna happen.
You feel it. You feel it. You know. So yeah, that tripped me out.
Yeah.
I think that there's a purity to that, which is I think one of the reasons why I'm such a like sports fan. You know, and I love surfing and skiing so much for those reasons because there's no
Yeah, you have to think quickly. There's no like internal monologue or anything. You're just skiing.
yeah, yeah, there are real consequences. And
Yeah, I know.
you know as well as I do. Yeah, fuck, man. And you know, and there's an honor to that. There's a purity to that. There's a connection to the earth in that that's not tainted by advertising or marketing or group identity. You feel me? And for me,
Yeah, totally.
as like a neurotic, you know, manic, fantastical kind of thinker, that is extremely purifying and grounding. Where like the business world is not, for me personally.
It's hard to find things that can make the gears stop grinding in your head so much. But yeah, skiing really fast is one of those things.
Dude, I'm a good skier. You are one of the few people that I know that can just straight out, flat out ski me. I am in awe of how fast you ski. When you decide to go, it's like, Jesus, I think you're just fat. I'm just going to rationalize and tell myself that it's just because you're fat. That when you get the inertia going, you can go faster than I can. That's the only way I'm going to feel good about myself. Okay?
It's funny because like I'm there's a million better skiers than me at Kirkwood. It's kind of amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen them. I just I don't know, man. Like we have a good time skiing together because we I think complement each other. So I mean, first of all, good luck in the recovery. I know that you're still probably how far in and how much more do you have?
Well, okay, so like the recovery part is going to be 9 to 12 months. So like I probably won't even get to ski until the new year. Right now, I'm walking around completely on my own with my leg locked straight in full extension.
Oh shit.
And then when I'm sitting, I can unlock my brace and bend it up to 80 degrees right now. So I'm
Okay.
PT every twice a week, and I'm not really sure how long I'm going to do that for, but it's it's going to be another 8-9 months or so of just working it.
And you got to fight the atrophy, right? Isn't that one of the big
Yeah,
deals
yeah.
right now?
A lot of it is like when I go in there, they're doing this electrostimulation therapy on my quads.
Oh yeah.
They like more than mildly shock your quad while you flex it, and it's kind of this weird feeling because like this is what you don't want to feel is getting getting shocked on your skin. But they're like, yeah, we're going to turn it up until it almost hurts, and
Sure.
we do that for like 6 or 7 minutes, and just like and that's stimulating muscle regrowth. But
Yep.
yeah, the muscle part is it's the range of motion, like the scar tissue and everything, and then the muscle regrowth.
Those things I've tried too. My mom used to be into them. They're called TENS. Don't ask me why. TENS units. TENS. There's a bunch of different kinds of them, and a lot of them have different beats that you can do. Like some of them just do a buzzing. Some of them do like a right, like a
Right.
and you can do the different intensities. We had one. I don't know what the f we did with them. But dude, the best thing that we've gotten recently for recovery is this. Have you seen these?
No.
Dude.
I've seen those before, just
There's,
in a different form.
yeah, there's a bunch of them out there. This one I like because it has a good force and a good amplitude relative to the other products on the market, and it's cheap. So this brand is the Theragun, like therapeutic Theragun, G3 LIV, and it's the lowest model. It's the cheapest model of all of them. It's like $200, and
Right.
the other ones that you'll find on the market are like $500. And it has two tips, and you can charge it from just a plug. It doesn't have a removable battery, but dude, this is so nice for my lower back.
Yeah.
Um, for your quad or your calf, So I highly recommend these.
After a long day of powder skiing, that probably feels pretty good, huh?
Feels good always, dude, because I get locked up. My body, my neck and shit, like I just get tight, but that helps a lot. Yeah, yeah. So dude, I wanted to dig into this set of ideas. I just wrote down some notes because I think it's very cool. So alchemy, right? Like this is a weird thing to talk about, so let's talk about it. What do you say?
I don't know. I don't know much about the history of it, but let's see what we can figure out.
Okay, so Jung, who is a very celebrated psychologist and researcher, Carl Jung. You've heard of Carl Jung before, right?
No.
Jung is Jung. And Jung, you don't say it Jung, you say it Jung, is a kind of father of modern psychology. My head's
I've got another screen here, so I'm looking him up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, look up Jung and then look up alchemy because he had a take on it. But dude, alchemy and mysticism are not pseudosciences in the simple fact that the foundation of modern Western thought was perpetrated by people that practiced this way of thinking and this body of knowledge. So Newton was a mystic. Newton is the father of modern physics, So even if it's not a central thread of popular culture or science, it's at least worthy of a look. So alchemy is a tradition upheld by an order of people that is still very much a part of the society. The Rosicrucians, the Masons, I want to say Golden Dawn, but don't quote me on that. That might be a whole different thing. But alchemy is the idea where it's told in scoffing. Oh, it's the idea of turning an inert, an unvaluable metal into gold. But I would contend, and from what I've read, it's really the idea of turning like tragedy into positive, opportunity. Or
a lot of the definitions I'm getting here, it's just how to change basic substances into other substances. It doesn't say anything about gold. Like, of course, there's that aspect of it, but you can just make it a little simpler than that.
Right. And so there's these different parts of the process, right, that have been clearly delineated. So it says negredo, albedo, cintrinitos, and rubedo. Now we know from earth science what albedo is. It's the reflectivity, right?
Reflectivity.
So negredo, albedo, citrinitus, and rubedo. Now, Jung had a take on those four parts, and he said the first one is confession. The second one is illumination. The third one is education. And the fourth one is transformation. Now, that speaks to me because if I want to go on doing shitty things that I do, I'll just never admit to it, right? Like, I'm perfect. Nothing that I do is wrong. Deal with it. Then I'm never going to grow. But if I confess to my faults, look at them, right? Shine light on them, right? Illuminate them. I'll see what I can get back from it, the albedo, right? Process them. I'm sorry?
Well, like reflect on them.
Yes, sir. The third one, education, right? Like get what I can learn from that. Okay, well, why have I been doing those things? What can I learn from that is the third one. And then the fourth one, transformation, right? Now I can move forward. Now, like, I maybe have not done all of those things for like porn watching, but I could, and maybe I'd be a better dude to my wife, So I recognize the power of that process. And Jung is a really interesting guy in what he has put forth in the science of psychology in terms of the collective unconscious. He was in the same vein as Freud in talking about the unconscious and the subconscious's effect on our behavior. He was big into the idea of archetypes. So like the old Shakespeare thing, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, and in one person's life, they play many roles. Like for sure there's truth to that, right? Like there's some existential reality to like the teacher or the coach or the student or the lover or the like victim or the tyrant, right? Like we all play those roles at different times in our lives, right? Well, then what's to be said of the role, like existentially, that idea in the substrate of human experience? Like there's some relevance to role, you know? So Jung is an interesting guy, and I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson, who I contend is really valuable for young people, even in the 30-something range like we are, because he's really positive. He talks a lot about taking responsibility for oneself, you know, instead of being the victim mentality and blaming and falling into the idea of, you know, the West is this patriarchal tyranny and it's all oppressive and you know, terrible. It's like, well, it's also like better than it's ever been. And, you know, we don't live in, you know, a fucking gulag, and we do have, you know, freedom of movement and thought and action. And, you know, whatever you think about, like, you know, 5G or the military industrial complex and, you know, the Republican Party and all of these like cloak and dagger, you know, terrible things, like you are still autonomous, right? You still do have personal sovereignty. And that's really powerful, you know, and that's something that we can leverage and use moving forward. So Jordan Peterson is really fun to listen to for anybody listening, and yourself. I've consumed hundreds of hours of his content. He has 2 books. I've read the denser of the 2 called Maps of Meaning, and I could talk about that. But
you know, I've actually spent some time listening to his interviews with Joe Rogan. He's done several of them on Joe Rogan's podcast.
What did you think?
He's interesting. You know, I agree with a lot of it. He comes off really strongly with his opinions, and I know that he alienates both sides, which I kind of appreciate.
Right? If you're gonna be an asshole to everybody. Right?
Yeah, I don't even think he's that much of an asshole, but like he doesn't play into either side really, which I appreciate. So like like everyone hates me. Perfect.
Right.
But
that's like the South, not to interrupt you, but that's like the South Park strategy. If you make fun of it, everybody, then you can't be cast as a hateful bigot or a sexist or a racist or a xenophobe, because fuck everybody, right? We're all in this together and we're all crazy, you know? So yeah, I hear you. I'm not to interrupt you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. You know, I've honestly I've fallen asleep listening to a lot of these because I'll put in podcasts, you know, when I'm going to bed and then pass out. So like a lot of it's like I don't even remember what I listened to. But what was the other book that you what is it? 12
Rules for Life and Maps of Meaning are his 2 books.
Mm-hmm. And then he's been going through some things lately. His Klonopin issue. What how do you feel about that?
I mean, sorry for him, probably mostly. I've taken Klonopin before. Dude, I've been on every fucking psychotropic drug you can be on. My dad's a medical doctor, a pediatrician, mm-hmm. and I was a shithead kid that wouldn't listen to directions. So you better believe I was sedated and medicated, you know, 12 ways Sunday, man. But it was only after having grown the ability to take responsibility for myself that I was able to get off of all medication and be a functioning human, you know, and here I am. But yeah, Klonopin's really a dangerous drug, like any benzodiazepine. It's I believe it's benzo, like lorazepam or midazolam or clonazepam, right? I took clonazepam last year when I was going through some things, and it's powerful. It makes you feel like a robot, don't it?
Yeah, just like I'm just gonna stare at the wall. Everything's great.
Yeah.
So yeah. Not recommended.
No. So what I know from his situation is that, to give a little bit of context, he rose to prominence and notoriety when he publicly opposed compelled speech legislation in Canada as a fairly respectable member of society, as a PhD, as a university professor, lecturer, and practicing physician, right? He's a clinical psychologist.
It was his stance on the gender pronouns that the University of Toronto was coming out with. Is that correct?
No, it wasn't the University of Toronto that came out with it. It was the Parliament of Canada.
Oh, good.
Canada's national legislative body. It might have been on the local level, to be fair. It might have been like in a state or a province, I don't know, but somewhere in the legislative process, the legislators came out with this idea that, okay, well, we're socially progressive in this country, so we're going to mandate people use these preferred gender pronouns.
And there's like 40 different pronouns too, isn't there? Like, oh my God.
And that's right. And I think there's more than that. But
yeah,
the counter in popular culture to this social progressivism, and I'm a lefty, right? Like, it's so weird to be a ideologically left person, right? Like, I fully want there to be social safety nets for people that are disenfranchised or dealing with drug abuse issues or mental health issues or single parent. Like, I'm a lefty, and the left is fucking bananas, and I'll tell you why right now. It was that the popular discourse around these kinds of ideas, where the alt-left, the extreme left, the vocal, angry left was saying, we're going to be champions for, the disenfranchised sexual communities, and that they want to be called they or Zim or Zer or, what have you. And we're going to just be champions of that through the legislation. Well, the counter was like just memes and scoffing and laughing about it. And like, well, one of my favorites was, I sexually identify as an Apache attack helicopter, or like, you can identify as a pancake, like it's whatever, good for you. Right. That's all well and good in the public sphere, except when one side goes to law. So Jordan, Dr. Peterson had the balls to sit in parliamentary proceedings and in front of, legislative bodies and say, well, hold on, you guys, there is a difference between social progressivism and legislating speech. You see, you are going across a line in saying that I have to say something that this legislative body doesn't understand how important it is. As soon as the government can legislate speech, now you're giving the government the ability to punish people based on speech, based on he said, she said. That's a slippery slope, man.
He was trying to draw a distinction between accepting other people's views and being forced to share other people's views.
Yeah, I think that's well said, right? Like, the beauty of the public sphere, of the debate, of the town square, is that we can come together and argue and debate and have a cup of tea or an espresso and just get along, right? The push of one angry side of the ideological, debate into legislation moves the government itself into a tyrannical body that plays one side against the other. So he stood up. He said, no, you guys, compelled speech is not the move. I'll tell you why. I've studied the tragedies of the 20th century more than anybody else in the room, and he has. What happened in Pol Pot's Cambodia and the Soviet gulags and, Nazi Germany, and, the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of those movements started out with movements of the people and against the tyranny of the oppressor, class. And
right.
These appealing ideas, and moved into degenerative mass murder of tens of millions of people. Okay, so he stood up, made the stance from his place of well-educated knowledge against legislative compelled speech. He became popular. He doubled down because he had already gained a presence on YouTube, which is just booming right now, right? Because we're in this new revolution, like the printing press, where now the spoken word has as great a reach as the written word, and more people can listen than can read. So he had already this huge amount of validity online. He goes to lecture to theaters across the world. He stops lecturing at the University of Toronto. He stops practicing as a clinical psychologist. He doubles down and goes and starts talking to people directly. He writes his book, Like, he went all in. And his daughter grew up with terrible autoimmune problems. She had, I forget the exact word for it, but she had arthritis in like 40 joints. She had to have her ankle replaced as a little kid. She had to have it replaced a second time as a young lady. She would have terrible autoimmune problems until she went onto the carnivore diet. And his wife was suffering with terrible ailments herself. And so he, to continue to be able to give these speeches, started taking Klonopin. And he got physically dependent on Klonopin. He ended up really in a bad way dependent on Klonopin. And he is, as we speak, recovering from said physical dependence on Klonopin. And
yeah, he went into that medically induced coma.
Is that right?
He went to Russia. He went to a clinic in Russia and was put in a coma for 8 days to get the withdrawals out of the way.
Fuck. Is he out of the woods then?
I wouldn't go that far. You know, I just looked him up a couple of days ago because I was curious. You know, you Google him and there's all these people saying, whatever, Jordan Peterson, you can't tell us how to live. You can't even live your, it's like everyone's just like, you know, taking this and throwing it back in his face, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can expect that when someone comes out with a strong opinion, instead of listening, people will just say, well, yeah, what about this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel you. I've consumed as much content of his as almost anything else recently in the last 2-3 years. And believe me when I say, he is not a flippant bullshit artist. He's just not. He's a deeply studied, well thought out, meditative, not in some Eastern mysticism sense, in the sense of
Right.
like, he says what he means, yeah? And he stands by it.
You can tell that he's spent hours, you know, thousands of hours thinking about this. He's not just, you know, pulling stuff out of his ass.
Right. So
it's like you said, it's well thought out, and I'm impressed by his what's the word? I can't remember.
perspective.
Sorry, I'm adjusting my brace here.
No, you're good. You said you're impressed by what? His perspective?
His perspective and his eloquence. That's the word.
Right. Right. He's very, very articulate. He's very well spoken. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. He says a few things that really resonate with me, and I won't go too long on it, but he says one thing that I think is really relevant to young people. And he says when he was a youngster, he would say things to defend himself and to try to signal to his own intelligence and to win arguments. That was the purpose of his speech growing up. And I mean, dude, he grew up in like southern Saskatchewan, like in a fucking oppressive place to live, right? Where like the winters are like 9 months and 40 below, you know, like he grew up tough, you know? And
did he live in a town or like out in the boondocks or?
I don't know exactly. I think he grew up in a town of you know, not a terribly great amount of people. Like his buddies were alcoholics and went on to work on the oil rigs and stuff. But he decided to become educated and he became a PhD, and you know, good on him. But he said that there was a point in his life where he realized that his words were not his own. He realized that he was a bullshitter and he didn't want to be a bullshitter anymore. And he made that conscious decision. And he talks a lot about dreams. He's really into dreams. So is Freud and Jung. And I want to come back to Jung, but I'll finish up with two things about him. Number one, this point at which he realized that speaking his own truth into being, saying what he believed to be true, was of the highest good. And so he made that choice. And he said his whole life got better because of it. He quit drinking. He got his life on track. He met his wife at like 8 years old, and he married her, and you know, they've been together since. Right?
It says here that he grew up in Fairview, Alberta, northwest of Edmonton, which is pretty far north.
Right.
But yeah, that's cold up there.
Right? And his dad was like a gunsmith and a trapper and a school teacher, and just he grew up tough and close to the earth, you know. And so he's a grounded dude. He's not one of these bullshit artists, you know, executives saying what he says for ratings. You know, he's just not. That's not who he is, right? So right away, I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I haven't been disappointed. I came to him from Rogan, I think also. I'm a Rogan fan, let it be said. I think that Rogan's great utility is that he thinks he's a dummy. And I have a great respect for anybody that declares themselves stupid because it means they're cunning, because they end up learning more than anybody else in the room.
I'm always impressed that you can bring this person on every 2 days or something, and they talk for like 3 hours. Like, oh my God, aren't you tired?
Well, he's nice, respectful. He's strong physically, so he's not defensive.
Right. Yeah, he knows he can beat the shit out of you if he needs to.
And that gives him the ability to listen, which I'm not very good at, and play with ideas without getting on the defense or going on the offense. He can just do the discussion. And so I think he has really good discussions.
He has all kinds of people on his show too. You have Ben Shapiro, Bernie Sanders. That's pretty much as opposite as you get.
Right. Exactly right. And physicists and, neuroscientists.
I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson's on there, I feel, every 2 weeks, which I enjoy.
And Graham Hancock, who was one of his first guests, who is really lampooned by the normative science community because of his theories about, there being civilizations pre-Ice Age, pre-Great Flood, pre 12,000 years ago. So yeah, he's willing to entertain all different thoughts. And I think that that's something that we can all learn from, right? It's like, how can I check my own perspective so that I can learn from everybody else's?
Right. And it pisses me off when people are like, Joe Rogan's on the alt-right. Did you see who he had on his show? It's like, no, that's not fair.
Dude, he has like 1,400 episodes.
Right.
Yeah. So Jordan talks about the turning point where he became a speaker of his own truth, which speaks to me because I think that that's an important part of any young person's life when they become themselves, right? It's like, well, I can aspire to any group identity and then be protected by that group, but eventually that group's going to fuck with me or like try to keep me in line. So my only real safety moving forward in my life is to take harbor inside of my own point of view and perspective and speak my own mind and truth. And maybe every group's going to hate me for it, but at least I have ground to stand on, and so he says that. But then the other thing that he says that I think is a beautiful thing is the recognition of the mythic, the mythological, as a truth, as a truism, where it's easy for the new atheists, for the Western reductionists, for the scientists, the strict, reductionist science mentality to cast aside all religion, all mythic thinking, all fantasy, all, oral tradition as silly and childish and not of a high order thinking. And here's this guy who's a PhD, brilliant man. If you're going to try to debate Jordan, on some, topic of scientific literacy, like he's going to hold his own, like the guy is well educated, makes the point in enormous detail that the traditions of religion, the Judeo-Christian, the Abrahamic religions, right? Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and, the paganist traditions of like shamanism and the even fantastical stories told through Disney movies. All of these things are real and relevant to the human condition. And how is that? Well, in short, you're the hero of your life. What you choose to do defines your, story arc. And you're going to have to, in archetypal fashion, face chaos. The order of our childhoods breaks into the chaos of our adolescence. We have to go out into the world from the, walled kingdom. We face the dragon. We learn the lesson. We get the gold or the virginal, princess, and that's not a sexist representation. It's the idea that to become, a keeper of the eros, to become a sexual being, to become a man, to become a woman, you have to go out and grow in the mythic, in the mythologic, in the religious sense. You gotta tell the truth. You gotta connect with something greater than you, right? So all of this shit that I think is so often not looked at deeply by the West is really important, and this is where it connects to me as a person, is the answer to depression, anxiety, hopelessness, disillusionment, commercialism, materialism, hopelessness, aimlessness that is so fucking prevalent in the richest country in the world, right? Maybe China's, passing us up soon, but why do we feel that way? Well, because we don't have this as a real strong cultural narrative anymore, or it's kind of in the underground, right? Like, why do we all love Star Wars so much, or Lord of the Rings so much, or why is religion such a deep part of our psyche? Is it because that everybody in the Bible Belt is a dummy? No, it's not. It's because it encodes in it a moral living, So anyway, those are two main parts of Jordan Peterson's zeitgeist that it's like, me, I go, yeah, that's right, and he speaks on them for hundreds of hours, and it's all on YouTube. You can find it. He lectures on the Old Testament. He lectures on the story of Pinocchio. He talks about, the 12 rules, like stand up straight with your shoulders back. And he has to defend himself from sociologically tainted interpretations of his words. Like, oh, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Is that a call to be combative and toxic masculinity? And it's like, no, you guys, it's the idea that you have to be competent and formidable, and you have to believe in yourself, and you have to take on the challenges of life, or else you're just a weakling, or else you're just gonna, turn tail, or else you're just gonna give up. And you can't respect yourself if you do that. So anyway, that's where I get to be a fan of Jordan, because it's like, I'm gonna get up and work out today. I'm gonna write down my thoughts. I'm gonna make a to-do list. I'm gonna do more. I'm gonna clean my house. I'm gonna clean my room. That's one of his rules. So yeah, he's a cool dude to study, and he is a really deeply influenced student of Jung. So Carl Jung is really worth reading. He's a fan of Nietzsche too, and Nietzsche, I haven't read any of his work, but I guess he went crazy at the end of his life, which is immediately intriguing to me. But he talks a lot about him. So yeah, I think this tradition of alchemy is really interesting to look into. How do we grow up? How do we transform into our next iterative self? Because the idea that we're always the same self is bullshit, right? We just aren't. As the years pass, we grow, right?
I mean, yeah, you don't have to. Obviously, people hear alchemy and they go, okay, turning whatever into gold, that's stupid. But if you just set that aside and see it more as taking one thing and turning it into another that's better, sure, sounds good to me.
Right. And so I've gone to the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum in San Jose, and it's this religious order, the Rosicrucians, and I don't know anything really about them. But their whole tenet is like love is the law. It's like the occult stuff of like Aleister Crowley, which is a crazy rabbit hole to go down. But when somebody says I have a belief system and it's found its entire law is love, I'm like, okay, like that's reasonable. Like,
find me one person that disagrees with that.
And so the order of the Rosicrucians financed the Egyptian Museum in San Jose, and it's a really cool place. They have all of this old Egyptian artifact, in one place, and they talk about alchemy. There's a room where it has a depiction of the process, and so it starts with calcination. So calcination, to calcify, right? To solidify and stop the propagation of maybe bad behavior, let's say. Dissolution, so like calcify the bad, dissolve the rest, separation, right? Separate the unuseful from the useful, conjunction, like come back into, you know, the possibility. I mean, I don't know, this is my own take. Fermentation, like get rid of what is still not useful in the new. Distillation, like come out with a new, I guess, mercury, and then coagulation. So I don't know, but I just wrote down the steps of alchemy, and I just think it's an interesting thing to study. So I'll leave it there, but I would like to become the best version of myself, and it's not in politics that I find the way forward. It's not in car commercials that I find the way forward. It's not in, you know, popular news programs that I find hope or a breadcrumb trail to the promised land. It's in these lectures and ancient traditions that are kind of being pushed aside by the algorithms or by the popular narrative. And so I choose to be a voice of those things because I think they're really valuable.
I was trying to think of a book that I was referred to. Shoot, I can't even remember, but it's basically about the power of the human mind to rewire itself. You know, if you can do certain mind exercises that actually change actual neural connections in the brain that make you think in a different way. It's not that one, but yeah, it's similar to that. And I find that actually really intriguing. I just don't have the mental discipline to sit and not, you know, I'm too busy rotting my brain on the internet all day, you know?
Sure. Well, there's still good shit that you can find on the internet, man.
Boy, especially nowadays, the internet's a really funny place because all these people are inside.
Right. I was given to the opinion that, oh, social media is all evil and it's all corrosive to the, you know, confidence of every young person, and it's terrible and we all compete. And then I started listening to Gary V. You've ever listened to Gary Vaynerchuk?
No.
Bro, if you want to get fired up to, like, you know, go to a garage sale, watch Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm telling you, he's a wonderful human. He came over from Belarus, or his parents did. His grandparents were in Soviet jails in Siberia because they were Jewish for like 10 years, both his grandfathers. He grew up with nothing. He worked in a liquor store for his youth. He's worth like $100 million now. He wants to buy the New York Jets. He has a media company called Vayner Media and VaynerX.
Huh.
He was an early investor in Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And he spends his time straight up, like half of every day, just talking with people, just individuals, like not scalable, not highly leveraged activity. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I choose to do that. And he still goes to garage sales. Like, he's extremely grounded. And he's just one of those dudes who knows how good he has it. And so he's positive. And he doesn't listen to the fucking sycophants, and he doesn't listen to the haters. He just does his thing, man. And yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude.
I'll check him out after this.
Yeah. There's a artist called Akira the Dawn, and he has a set of albums called Meaning Wave, like find meaning in the wave, meaning wave. And the different albums are different speakers. So he has one on Jordan Peterson, a whole album. And it's like electronic music with the vocals of the speaker on top of it. He has Jordan Peterson, Gary V, Jocko Willink, Terrence McKenna, who's my favorite, all of these different ones. And they're very, very good. They really pump me up. They get me fired up. So I highly recommend it.
I found the book I was talking about. It's called Buddha's Brain. Okay. Buddha's Brain by Rick Hansen. It's pretty interesting. I didn't finish it, but I got into it, and it's pretty interesting. It's a combination of like kind of Eastern philosophy and neuroscience.
How so?
Well, it's just like it's kind of taking the the mind exercises of the Buddhist mentality and kind of explaining how they actually help rewire your brain.
I hear that.
So
I just put on my Facebook an interview with Antero Ali, and Antero Ali has written many books. These are two of them.
all
And
right.
he's an extraordinarily interesting and intelligent guy. He is a he's a filmmaker, also independent filmmaker, and he's putting his entire filmography on YouTube for free. I was in one of his movies called Flamingos, and he just released a movie called The Vanishing Field. I thought it was The Vanishing Field, but he calls it The Vanishing Field. And the relevance of this with respect to Buddhism is that all the actors in the movie, or at least many of them, there's like a handful of actors. It's a small kind of, independent, art film, right? And there's maybe 5 or 6 actors in the whole film, and the majority of them are practicing residents on a Zen monastery. So they're Buddhist monks who have lived on a monastery for like 10, 15 years, and they acted in his movie for him as themselves. And the story is of a young man named Jacob who's just had enough of life, and he goes to live on this monastery, who the actor actually lives there, and explores ways of kind of going beyond his experience of Western culture. And it's really good, dude. The Vanishing Field. It's on YouTube for free. Antero Ali. The links on my Facebook page. And he's a really interesting guy. He came up in the 60s in the Bay Area. Was a student of Timothy Leary's. Knew Robert Anton Wilson. And worked on their theory called the 8th Circuit brain. So the 8th Circuit brain is fascinating. And it's a theory that has been worked on by a lot of these really, really deep thinkers, like PhD level thinkers. And I've read it, and I'm not bullshitting you. It is a transformative book. It's a book that you don't read unless you want to like go on a trip, and I really enjoyed it. So
I got nothing but time. I'll have to check it out.
dude, the 8th Circuit brain. I promise you'll like it.
I don't have Facebook anymore, so I'll probably ask you for that again.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send you the link. I'll put the link in the notes for this podcast. I'll put links to all this stuff, to Jordan Peterson's lectures, to like something on alchemy, to Akira the Dawn. So anybody that's listening can investigate the stuff, because I'm not selling anything, like do what you want.
You don't have to this or anything.
I just have gotten great value in terms of dealing with my own demons from the work of people who have dealt with their own. And so I choose to be a beacon for these kinds of helpful thought patterns and exercises, because I know how many people are out there, trapped in drug and alcohol, abuse patterns, or anger, or vengeful thinking, or malevolence.
Dark world out there these days.
But there's lots of lights, man. There's lots of lights. You just gotta find them, and then, as luck should have it, become one.
You gotta find this good balance between, you don't want to be ignorant, but you also don't want to get too balls deep into the news, because that just makes me angry. But I also want to be informed. So yeah, it's this balancing act. Like I'm gonna pick and choose when I'm gonna be angry and watch the news.
Did you see Weinstein on Rogan?
Who?
Weinstein? I don't know if it's Eric or somebody else. It's the most recent one.
I think so. He kept on mispronouncing his name, didn't he? I feel like I remember him being like Weinstein. Maybe I just watched. Maybe I listened to part of it. Hold on, let me check. Check my.
I don't remember that, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It certainly could have been that.
Oh no, Eric Weinstein. No, I did not watch that or listen to it.
Really good. Really
Who is
good.
he?
Uh, it's a good question.
It's like it's tough to gauge whether I want to listen to it because a lot of his comics that he has on, I'm just like not interested because they're talking about.
No, Weinstein is absolutely not a comic. He's an academic. He's a he talks at length about the difference between the truth and the institutional cultural narratives, and it's really interesting. And the conclusion that he comes up with is revolt. He's like,
Right.
yeah, we're in
That's
this.
where we're going, huh?
He says we're in this situation where everybody knows the cultural narrative is bullshit, but we are content to be right and still have the institutional cultural narrative make the choices for like our foreign policy, our national defense, the allocation of funds from our legislative and governmental bodies. And it's like, that's not okay. It's like, we forgot that we have the ability to depose our governments. Like, I'm not sitting here espousing revolution. I'm just telling you that he's a very well-spoken guy, and him and Rogan have a really good discussion. And Rogan comes back with something that's pretty powerful. And he goes, I hear that you're saying revolt and you're making good points, but he's like, I was really high sitting on my deck a few days ago, and I made a tweet or an Instagram post, Rogan did, and he says, I don't think there ever was a normal. The idea that we're going to return to normal, I think, is nonsense. And he posted two things as I'm not saying that this is true. I am maybe more in the Weinstein camp because I get angry at people lying and getting away with it. But Rogan posted a social media thing that had a picture of Joe Exotic from Tiger King. Have you watched that?
Oh man, no,
Oh,
it's taken the internet over by storm.
it's really, really good. It's worth watching.
Yeah, for sure, it's on my list.
Yeah, so he posts a thing of Joe Exotic, and next to it he posts a thing of our current commander-in-chief, president of the United States, talking about the viral pandemic in terms of his own ratings.
Oh, I know.
And it's like, Jesus, like how far from any kind of rational place are we as a society?
It's like funny, but it's not funny. It's like, oh my God, what planet are like? Am I dreaming right now?
So Rogan just took that to be there's no normal, and Weinstein took it to be liars and institutional corruption needs to be eradicated. And make your own conclusion, but it's a very good dialogue that they have. Very.
Yeah, I'll throw that on today.
Yeah, man. That's all I got. That's like you just delved into my psyche. What are you thinking? What's on your mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. You think more than I do. I kind of zone out more. I don't get lost in my head like that. But I'm impressed.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm more of a I like to absorb things, but not necessarily churn them in my own head too much. So like I love listening to podcasts and documentaries, but my brain doesn't turn off, but it doesn't reprocess it quite as much as I think you do.
Well, one of the things that eighth circuit brain says that's interesting to me is it says, what is your definition for intelligence? Okay.
I don't know.
So take your time. And then the second question is, by your definition, how do you increase it? Okay, so I'll leave that to you, but the book says here's its attempt to answer those two questions. Intelligence is a 3-part process. And use your own words, your own representations for all 3 processes. I'll give you some examples for each of the 3. Number 1, take in, perceive, sense, see, hear, feel, touch, taste, right? Number one. You with me? Number two, rationalize, interpret, reason, plug into your own mental map, make sense of, integrate, right? Number two. Number three, regurgitate, communicate, share, pass on, give, right? 3 parts. How do you increase it? Do it more.
It reminds me of back in school, like I tried to do the math tutoring thing for a while, and I don't think I was that good at it because it really tests your knowledge of a certain subject to not only understand it yourself, but to put it into words that somebody else can understand. And that's what that reminds me of. Like, it's not just a matter of understanding it yourself that makes you really know it. You have to be able to reprocess it and then put it back out in your own words. Because that's how you really know that you understand it. Right.
I've heard that before from a lot of different sources. One great way to learn is to teach.
Right, exactly.
I've heard if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it. Or Einstein supposedly is quoted as saying, if you can't understand, or rather, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it. I like that. I like that idea. And I think that part of my process of growing and evolving and hopefully moving into a future, good version of myself is taking what got me through really troubling times as a young adolescent and being able to give that to other people, right? Because if I can't give it to anybody else, then I don't have it, right? But if I can give it to somebody else, then not only do I have it, but it's still alive. It's still real. And I can. The thing that I realize is I don't do it in few words. I'm very verbose, but I'm verbose because I want to get the thought out in its entirety. I have like these balls of light, and I see them from all different angles. And to be able to give them to another person, I have to kind of speak I have to speak in circumference to it, because then you get the idea of the entirety of the body of knowledge. And maybe it's just a scaffolding of logic chains, right? Maybe it's just a statement that then links to another statement, that links to another statement, that links to an observation, that links to an experiment or an experience of life. And then all together, it's this thing that has power to help, and I can give it to somebody. But the people
I think the difference between you and me is like that whole chain of events happens verbally for you, and for me it happens in my head. Like there's definitely an internal monologue going on in my head, but I'm not saying it out loud. But I think to work your way through a problem, you tend to put the whole thing out there.
Right. Because I don't ever want to be accused of holding back or not telling the truth or in some way conspiring or holding malevolence. Like, I want to be the kind of person, let's just say I want to be, I want you to know how I feel, because then you can trust me. So I take solace in the spoken word. And that, interestingly enough, that's another one of those sacred bits of wisdom that's been passed down from the Abrahamic tradition. There's 2 things that have come almost all the way from Egypt, ancient Egypt, as symbolism. There's the eye of Horus, right? Don't turn a blind eye to, corruption or malevolence. Always keep your eyes open, right? And number 2, the word, the spoken word. The true word is power, man. That's the word of God, right? He created things and it was good. You know, the concept, and it's true, is if you tell the truth, things will get better for you.
Well, yeah. That's pretty universal. Just tell the truth. You don't have to remember what you said if you always tell the truth.
I love that. I always thought that was a beautiful way of saying it. You tell the truth and you never have to remember anything.
Yeah.
Which is good because I like cannabis and I can't remember much.
Yeah, I like drinking too. So, cheers.
Cheers, man. I got some water, but yeah, I agree. And, it's something that I think young people and people that are still under the tyranny of parents or, loved ones need to hear, because I think that oftentimes when we're not adults yet, others can influence our behavior, through, negative feedback, the lack of encouragement, putting us down, talking shit, disagreement, argumentation, all of these things. And at best, it makes us tough and fortifies our ability to believe in ourselves and move forward and grow. At worst, it makes us corrode inside and become liars or panderers or
just depressed. It seems like kids these days are getting more and more depressed.
I hear you. I think that's the message that I want to get out to all these young people, that a lot of other great people are putting out there. You can do it, but there's a recipe, and it's maybe not the one that you want. You got to go into the darkest part of your psyche. You got to tell the truth. You've got to, do this process, whatever the fuck that is. You have
to go through whatever process it is. You have to go through it. I think a lot of people look for a quick fix, drugs, suicide, whatever it is. But I think a lot of people are either unwilling or don't know that they need to just fight the fight for a while.
Right. Dude, I've lost too many friends, man. I've lost too many friends. And I'm only 33 years old. Are you 33 or 34?
I'm 30.
You're 30. I forget we're not the same grade. That's right. You're a youngster, dude.
It's the first time anyone's called me that in a while.
Yeah, it's something worth talking about when objectively we're richer in the Western world than any culture has ever been. And we have these massive suicide rates and this huge depressed population and this huge abuse of pain-killing medication. And
so that's why I really enjoyed Andrew Yang's position that GDP is an outdated. I mean, it's not just his position. The creator of GDP said you shouldn't use this as a gauge of how a country is doing, and that was 100 years ago. And here we are saying GDP is high as it's ever been. This is great, but there should be a different metric for social well-being, because I feel like that's kind of in the dumpster right now.
I couldn't agree more. I have found myself magnetically glommed onto a couple really right-wing conservative thinkers on like my Facebook and stuff. And luckily, to my credit, frankly, I've been able to have good dialogue with some of these individuals. And if they're watching this podcast, you guys know who you are, respectfully and kindly, because I'm not interested in argumentation or bullshitting. It's like, if I have to fight, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to the death. And I'm not going to fight if I don't have to. I will walk away from a fight every single time, unless you bring the fight to my doorstep, in which case, be ready to die, because I am. So the only reason I bring that up is not to say I'm so tough. It's that I find that these discussions of political ideology move us so quickly into groupthink and identity politics and group identity that it's so indicative of the soul sickness of our country and our Western world that maybe places like Japan, I don't know this, but maybe places like Japan or France or Switzerland don't suffer with to the degree that we do. And I am for sure a leftist, ideologically. I'm not a very ideological person. Like, I'm more interested in you as an individual than your group. I don't give a fuck what group you're a part of. Let's go ski. You know what I mean? But I'm certainly more of the like compassionate, interested in the individual well-being than the quote unquote economy. So I've found myself embroiled in these discussions with some conservative-minded folk, and it takes a lot of my energy to be able to keep it on the up and up and just discuss, talking points, discuss issues, right? It's like, okay, immigration, well, let's talk about it. Okay, inflation versus, governmental spending, let's talk about it, and I'm happy to do that. But the more that I've done that, not that I've done that to any great degree, but the little bit that I've done that, frankly, I see that it's a waste of my time and energy, because I haven't run into very many people. I don't know if this is true, but maybe it's 50-50, but some are not interested in reason, logic, the logos, oratory, charisma, learning, nuance. Some are more interested in playing a team game and
winning an argument.
And it just puts a bad taste in my mouth. At a certain point, if I realize that we're not getting anywhere, on Facebook in a 4-page back and forth, I'm going to excuse myself, and I'm going to do so respectfully if I can. I'm going to say something like, and I have, God love you, I'm going to vote for so-and-so. And, that's my position, God love you, you have the right to vote for whoever you want. I have other things that I can do with my time and my energy, and I'm going to go do those things, instead of.
The polarization game that's going on right now is really exhausting, because either you agree with me or you disagree with me and want me to die, essentially. Like that's exhausting.
Where in the cultural evolution did the idea get sold and bought by the American people, sold by the aristocracy and bought by the proletariat, that if a person disagrees with you, they are your adversary? Where did that come from? And at what point did we as a community buy into that shit? Because it couldn't be more wrong.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's all that true, but I feel like a lot of it's just it sells better TV. Watching people fight on TV or whatever. People watch Jerry Springer in the middle of the day, and so that's just people fighting on TV.
Yeah.
No one tunes in. It's like, this is going to be a great intellectual discussion where somebody learns something and changes their view.
Yeah. And so that's part of my ongoing motivation for making these podcasts, for learning and trying to have those discussions where I can that are productive, that they are an ever-growing component of the consumed media, right? Like, we can't say that, the polarized as they are popular media outlets on TV are mainstream. We just can't say that anymore, because Rogan gets more views every day than all of daytime television combined, period. End of story.
That's pretty good.
Bro, by a factor of like 10x or 100x. And that is not, I'm not making this up. Like, I don't even want to throw out names because I don't want to glorify them, but like, choose your favorite news channel might get 500,000 views. Rogan gets 500 million downloads per month. He's getting in the billions of downloads in the course of 6 months a year. Like, it's bananas how many people are tuning into long form, unedited, untainted by profit motive dialogue. And it's really encouraging because dialogue is what we need, right? Like, what are you reading? What are you thinking about? What's on your mind? What are you going through? Well, that's interesting. Holy shit, I'm going through this. I'm reading this. I'm learning this. As opposed to, I think this, and I think this because of this, and, you know, deal with it. It's like,
here's my 10 seconds to make my opinion, then you're not allowed to say anything back.
yeah, it's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. And what it is salespeople for a profit motive cause. It's so fucking clear to me. And as soon as I know that there's a vested interest in a certain way of thinking, I'm not interested. I'm just not
It
interested.
just instantly turns you off, huh?
I'm interested in ways of thinking that expand my world. If I can learn about avalanches so that I can go deeper into the backcountry, fucking teach me about avalanches. If I can learn about the mind so I can go deeper into my psyche and deal with my anger issues or my defensiveness or my propensity for malevolence when I feel threatened, I want to learn those things because they help me. If you're telling me something about how your political group needs to be supported because that means you're going to be in power for longer, I don't give a fuck. I just don't care. But if you're going to tell me something in the political sphere that's going to help a group of people that can use help, I'm all ears. And the thing that I've found is that I'm free when I'm not representing a group, when I'm just being me, because then I can't be co-opted for somebody else's purposes. Like, I'll sit here and tell you I'm a fan of Rogan and I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, but I'm not trying to sell you their books. I'm not trying to get you to be a part of the team. Like, make your own mind up, right? Like, I don't know, man. I just think that the more that we all take solace in our individuality and say, not I'm a this, I'm a that, but I'm Devin, then we can start. Then we have solid ground on which we can build something that will last. Yeah, man. Like there was a really neat movie series with Sean Bean, and he played this like French Napoleonic War lieutenant who like rises up the ranks, and he's this like swashbuck. You know who Sean Bean is?
No.
Sean Bean played Boromir in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Remember him?
Yes.
So he's this guy in this Napoleonic War drama. It's escaping me the name of the series, but it's really good. And he leads this band of snipers, like these musket shooting special ops guys in the old school Napoleonic Wars, right? Like horseback, but no real sophisticated firearms, right? Like muzzle loaders, like grueling battles, right? Like you needed to be a fucking athlete and have some grit and know what you're doing with your firearm, right? And I'm only bringing this up for one quote from the thing that I thought was so beautiful. But there's this general, and it shows the aristocracy of the British war machine as just like any other institution, right? The guys at the high ups don't have any fucking idea what it's like to be in the dirt, right? Their shoes are shined, their fucking, whites are polished. They don't know anything about the war that's actually being waged, but they're making all the decisions, right? And they're making all their decisions on their own economic interests and protecting their own, real estate and all this just crap that the poor guys are going out and dying to execute. So Sean Bean comes up as this veteran of a previous, set of violent conflicts as a tough motherfucker, right? That knows how to win a battle. And these generals don't. They know battle theory. right? That's all based on past knowledge. But war is like anything, it constantly evolves, right? It's always new. So the people that are actually doing the thing are actually doing the thing. They're not wasting time in abstraction. They're not wasting time in the land of theory. They're doing it, right? So he gets these guys and he tells them, because the convention was it takes like 3 minutes to load and shoulder a musket, a muzzle loader, right? And your utility as a fighter on the battlefield of a musket team is directly correlated to how fast you can reload, right? Because you got like two lines, guys on kneel and the guys behind them, and it's like you need to be able to go, line 1, line 2, reload, right? Or else they're just going to charge you on horseback and just fuck everybody up. So his thing was, all right, guys, we're going to load in a minute. And they're all like, that's crazy. What? No way. That's never been done. Nobody can load in a minute. It's like, listen, we're going to load in a minute. And I like it because it's like an Elon Musk first principles theory. He goes, if we can load in a minute, we can win the war. Or rather, we can win the battle, which then could propagate us to win the war. So we're going to figure out a way to load these motherfucking firearms in a minute. And there were all these conventions, right? There were all these rules. You had to rip off the powder thing and pour it in with a funnel, okay? You had to rip off the powder stop and put it in with a what do you call it? Like a ramrod, right? And that took 3 minutes. And so he's like, you don't, and all of his men were like, there's no way, nobody can load in a minute. He goes, yeah, you think so? Watch me. And he fucking has the gun. And he grabs the powder, rips the fucking powder open with his teeth, pours it in, no funnel. Fuck it, no funnel. Gets the powder stop, puts it in, fucking slams the gun down, the powder goes down, boom, he's on, boom, does it again, boom, 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 right? And he does it in a minute. And all his guys are like, he just broke all the rules. And he's like, yeah, I broke all the rules. I don't give a fuck about the rules. I care about the result. And he taught them all how to load in a minute. And then there was a general that he had made a bet with. And it was like, if I can get every man of mine to load in a minute, you give me the promotion and the, chateau in Nice. And, that's what the deal is. He's like, there's no fucking way you're going to get every man that you would have under your, command to load in a minute. You're on, and if you lose, you're in the rear guard and you got to, shine my boots or something. And he does it. And he does it, right? Every one of his men do it because he just drills them. And he's like, we're all going to be able to do this. And you're going to realize that you don't need to follow rules. You need to understand the entirety of what's happening. Okay? So then he goes up to the general and the general's like, you're a fucking pirate, when he loses the bet. As if to say, I'm aristocracy. I have value. I'm of a good family and good birth. I have wealth. I have meaning, I have status, and you're just a pirate. And he comes back and he goes, yeah, I am a fucking pirate. And you're going to be real glad that you got pirates on your side when the shit kicks off. And bro, that gives me chills because I love the idea that you're an outsider. Like, yeah, I'm an outsider, but you're going to love that there are outsiders amongst us when everything that constitutes what is inside falls apart.
That reminds me a lot of working at Kirkwood now. Kirkwood's owned by a big old, a giant company now. And Kirkwood is different as a mountain and therefore requires different methods of getting the place open, which is not okay to the man, the conglomerate over there. But, it's almost like we have to get emotionally beat down and just accept, yeah, I guess we're going to have to do this if we want to stick around, which is upsetting. So, but yeah, that's what that reminds me of, is working for a big company out in the mountains where, they don't know what's going on when I'm out snowmobiling around, right. But they're going to tell me how to do it.
Right. Same thing's going on in the medical community right now. My mom just sent me a text about a physician who is so frustrated because their protocols and their decision-making framework is being made by MBAs who have no medical education. And it's like, you guys don't know what the fuck you're talking about, and you're making all the decisions based on profit motive. And my hope is that times of crisis reorient the community to what's important. And I think that dialogue, shared evolution, right? Let's both come to a higher understanding. Pursuit of shared goals, right? Let's agree on a goal and then let's get there together. You know, these things are of intrinsic value. And unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that for too long, and I mean, this is my opinion, the value set has been wealth accumulation. And Bob Marley said, if you're chasing money, you're never going to be satisfied, because money is just numbers, and numbers goes on forever. You know? So I hope that we can, as intelligent humans, come together and rally around things that are more important than money. Community, health, fitness, well-being, psychological, emotional, spiritual.
Well, that's where those countries you were mentioning earlier, Denmark, Switzerland, Finland, I think they've done a better job at that than we have.
I agree. Why do you suppose that is?
Oh, I don't.
Or how?
You know, I couldn't say just because I don't know what it's like to be over there, but I do recall hearing, you know, they do the happiest country in the world surveys every year, and it's always, you know, Finland or Switzerland or something like that. And it's not because they all live lavish lifestyles. It's because they don't expect a lavish lifestyle. They're just happy to be living.
Yeah, well, the thing that I've found in having traveled, thanks to my father taking me and my brother over to Europe, I'm just deleting some files real quick, is that, you know, I've been really healed by the ocean and by the mountains. Simple as that. And good Lord, I don't think it's possible for a person to be in Lauterbrunnen in Switzerland and not be struck, shocked, physically by the majesty and beauty of the mountains. And so I think that when we, as human organisms, as biological animals, are in touch with the majesty of the natural world, we realize that anything that we can build pales in comparison, for lack of a better phrase, next to the natural world. I can't make a wave better than a natural wave. People are trying. People are doing wave pools and stuff, and good on them. That's great. But I mean, the ocean is always king, you know? Nothing that I do inside of what I can buy even closely approximates, even roughly approximates the beauty and wonder of skiing down a mountain, you know? And that feeling, you know, I don't want to say knowledge or wisdom because it's based on an experience, right? It's that recognition in me has subverted materialism, has subverted the ability for me to be manipulated by advertising. And I'm very grateful for that, because I could very well have been one of those suicides, just by the loss of soul that comes from thinking that the next purchase is going to make my life meaningful. I recognize that my connection to my friends, my connection to the natural world, my connection to myself is what gives my experience of my life meaning. And that's something that is an ongoing process. It can't be bought, you know, and frankly, it can't be sold. Like, I can't give it to anybody. I can give the key to the door, you know, I can write down all of my thoughts that have helped me get to the place where I feel like I have meaning in my life. But I can't, you know, you can lead a horse to water, you know, can't make them drink.
You can share, but you can't emulate or copy.
Well, I can't make another person emulate or copy, right? I can give you the blueprints, but I can't build your house, you know, because it's your house. I can build my own house,
It's your house, and it's worth more to you if you do it yourself anyway.
Right. Right. We don't appreciate what our parents give us, you know? I think that's one of the interesting things about hyper successful people. Usually they come from nothing, right? It's these children of multimillionaires that are doing Xanax and benzos, or I guess Xanax is a benzo, benzos and opiates and coke and, just they don't, nothing has meaning because they haven't had to build it themselves. They haven't had to go out into the chaos of the unknown and make their own way. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to be said for the Western sickness, soul sickness. And I've found the answer, it's in, aviation that my grandfather gave me, it's in, the Eastern tradition of Ganesh, and the understanding of righteousness and, standing your ground and, waiting for the riches to come, but, being at peace with oneself. It comes from, the crashing waves of the ocean, like, and life, like it's no mistake that I've populated my life with things that give me meaning because it's the way forward for me.
Yeah, you're never going to get served up something that makes you happy on a platter. You have to go get it.
Right.
Yeah, that's why you moved to Bend. That's why we moved up to Tahoe and eventually Nevada. It's like, well, we wanted to do it, so we're going to go do it.
Right. And why aren't we telling people that? I mean, not me and you, but why? Because I think we are. Why isn't that part of the cultural narrative? Is it as simple as the powers that be want to sell more tchotchkes and gadgets? Is that what it is?
I have no idea. It's like you and I are in this weird generation where, like, when we were in school, we were still fed that you go to college, you go to get a 4-year degree, you get a job for $100,000 a year, no problem. Clearly, that's not true anymore. There's plenty of PhDs going out and working at Starbucks, and a lot of the kids these days are finally catching on to that. So maybe they're going to a trade school instead, learning how to be an electrician or a plumber. And I think that's fine. Like, I'm not sure where I was going with this, but yeah, we're in that weird in-between generation where we still believed in that, but it was too late by the time we got into the workforce.
It's interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, why we're not being told that the path to meaning is intrinsic to the self and one's own passions and interests, as opposed to join the workforce, get a degree and,
Uncle Sam, be miserable and make money and start a family. That's no thanks.
Yeah, no thanks. I said no thanks also, man. And look at us. We still have relationships with wonderful women. We still have skills that we can bill hourly for. We still are living a life that we've built for ourselves. There is a way that is the path less traveled, and yeah, I think that our generation has an interesting perspective relative to the current status quo because we grew up in a time when there was a very clear narrative that's just no longer correct. We also grew up before the internet, and we're the last generation to really have done that.
You're like, right, I'm a couple years younger than you, but it was right at the beginning of it, really.
Yep. I remember being in middle school when AOL and connectivity was starting to be a thing, and everybody knew it was what we all needed to focus on, and it was going to grow, but I don't think we understood how much. But I had this influence where, because my parents split up when I was 8, I had such an aversion to money and status and these things that didn't help my family stay together that I knew that I had to make my own way. And what it did was give me the strength of character to believe in myself. And I want that for everyone. I want all of us to be able to find strength and meaning and purpose inside of ourselves, as opposed to looking for those things externally. Because my experience is no amount of what is advertised as having those things externally will fill those holes in our heart. And none of those things will protect us from the trauma of life. We, that is to say, the individual, is stronger than all trauma. The individual is stronger than their misfortune. The individual is wherein strength and fortitude of character and resolution of spirit and foundation of meaning is to be found. And look, we've all been through trauma. I am not so deluded or self-centered to think that I am the only one to have gone through pain. I get it. I get it. We all have. And probably many more so than myself. And my compassion and rationale is that I want to speak to that place. And I want to speak to that place not with some heavy-handed answer, but with a bit of compassion, with a bit of understanding, and not in a way of listen to me and it'll all be okay, but listen to yourself and you'll get through it.
Yeah, do you want to find this balance between kind of sharing your experience, but also realizing that you don't know what other people are going through? So, you know, and I think that's back to Jordan Peterson. I think he gets a lot of criticism for maybe not having lived the life that he's explaining people. That he's not really telling people how to live, but I think he comes off to some people preaching that they should live their life this way, even though he's not in their head, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I think that the ability to digest what he's saying comes from the willingness to let down the defenses of personal experience. Like,
right.
Neither of us has access to the other's set of experiences. We can share them, you know, we can be candid. But at the end of the day, I only have access to my point of view, right? And vice versa. You only have access to your point of view. I think the utility comes from when we find patterns of adaptation that we can share with one another as if they are maps of territory that at some point we each may have to traverse, right? Like,
yeah, you can go to the other side and say, okay, he might not fully understand what you're going through, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn from his perspective.
That's right. That's right. And that to understand that we're never going to be inside of each other's shoes is not grounds for discounting the other's attempt at compassion.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to put a wall around yourself.
Right, because I think that if we can come together as a conglomerate of individuals, right, without losing our autonomy, we are intrinsically more adaptable as a superorganism than we would be by presupposing that we are all the same. If we come together under the tenets of we all understand each other, we all feel the same, we all think the same, we all share a worldview, like I would argue the ideologically political left does, or excuse me, right does. We all worship the market. We all think a certain, I mean, I don't mean to just be political, but if okay, forget that. Let's say if as a rule to join a group, we have to relinquish our autonomy, I would say that group is brittle and ready to fail, because it's not bringing in new ideas. And yet, if we come together and say, I don't know what you've been through. You can tell me, you can express it, but I have not felt it. And yet, I'm with you. I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to try to understand. That's more powerful, I would argue, than saying something like, when you go through a hard time, that we all do, you got to do X, Y, and Z. Because of course you can come back and say, you haven't been through what I've been through. And that's true. But that's a different narrative than saying, though we are all different and experience life uniquely based on our experiences and perspectives and points of view, we can have community without giving up sovereignty, autonomy, and one's own voice. You feel me?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's, a communist government never works, but a democratic socialist government seems to be working just fine over there, because
right.
those people are able to make the decision that they want, but they're also contributing to the greater good of their fellow humans.
Right.
And it's always in the middle.
Right. The sacred utility of the sovereign individual in a group, right? As opposed to a top-down authoritarian group first mentality, right? Like, are we a hive of bees where the bee is of no utility, but the hive is the only important thing? Or are we something more evolutionary complex than a hive of bees, in that we are all free thinking, free acting agents of, chaos and order, 50-50, like the yin yang. And yet we are this cybernetic collective connected by the internet, where we can share ideas in real time, at the speed of light through fiber optics. Like, that seems to me to be a more powerful organism, the collection of all of us, than would be a set of protocols, right? Like, I don't care how smart the person is that comes up with a set of rules. If we write down a set of rules and then we follow that, we have regressed. What we should do is say, do what you will, and then try to move forward collectively. Like, you need the creative, not you, but one, you do, I do, but like, you feel me? Like, the group needs the creative impulse, needs the new thought, needs the new patterns, needs the critical thought, the mavericks, the rebels,
the risk takers,
right? Because without it, the group doesn't move forward. The entirety, the emergent supraordinate system doesn't evolve. And if a system doesn't evolve, it fails, So that's where I'm coming from in, like, I'm not going to apologize for using cannabis. I just don't give a fuck. I like it. It works for me. I've found a way to use it that doesn't impact my health negatively. I use tinctures. I don't smoke. And even though I recognize that there are people that would judge or discount me as a person based on that, I'm gonna be me.
You don't really need their company anyway.
And that's, I think, a subset of the tenets that build upon themselves the idea that being the autonomous self is of a higher order good than group membership. And I don't give a fuck what group. I don't care if it's the executive cabinet of the presidency of the United States. If being a part of that group means you have to lie, then I contend, as a free thinking individual, that person is a piece of shit. Period. One man's opinion.
A lot of pieces of shit out in Washington, then.
You feel me? Take it with a grain of salt. I'm just saying, the person that's digging ditches, for a landscaping company, let's say, that tells the truth, is of a higher order of character than a person who is a part of a, classically higher value group while giving away part of their value as an individual. So,
Yeah, no doubt.
you know, that's what I'm saying.
I think so.
What do you think has been of value to you in growing up? If you were going to give a message to young people that are going through something difficult in their life, what would be your thesis?
You know, one thing that's helped me, you know, a lot of people, especially people that have had some things happen to them, you know, in their life, and then the next thing happens and they immediately start thinking about all the other bad things that have happening, and they go to, great, I'm going to add this on top of that pile of shit, and I'm going to get that much more upset. Whereas I'm pretty forgetful. Like once a problem has been resolved, either because of me or because I got lucky and it worked itself out, I tend to forget about it. Not like forget and make the same mistakes again, but I don't let that live in my head. You know, like when the next bad thing happens, it's not the 40th bad thing that's happened in my life. It's the first bad thing that's happened today.
I hear you.
You know?
Yep. Short memory is good for those that want to move forward positively, huh? Yeah, I hear you. I've heard that we as people key in on negativity more so than we key in on positivity. Because, right? I mean, haven't you found that to be true? Like if you make a post and there's 10 positive comments, it's like, oh, whatever. But if there's that one negative comment, it's like, right? Like it gets you, you know, and you know, get a person, right? I'm not trying to say you. And interestingly, I heard from some person on some platform that that's an evolutionary response to the relevance of threat evolutionarily. Like if we're, you know, organisms out in the big bad world, any perceived threat is potentially a threat to life or limb. So we are neurologically calibrated to responding to negative much more than positive.
Well, that's what gets the adrenaline flowing.
Right.
Contentness doesn't get your adrenaline going.
Right. Right. Well, wouldn't you say, or would you agree or disagree that physiologic, that nervous system response pattern is something that is hacked by advertisers, by popular media, by...
Oh, certainly. Here's we're going to make up this danger and we're going to sell you this thing to protect you from that danger.
Yep. And even more subversively, I think here's this danger that we're going to talk about ad nauseum, and we're the good guys. Just join us.
We're going to save you.
Just be on our side. Just be on our team. Just vote for us, or just believe in us, or just look at us. We're handling the problem. We are the good guys. Anybody that says they're the good guys, you know, that's a red flag, I would contend. The people, right. I'm sorry.
I should tell you that you're the good guy. You shouldn't convince me that you're the good guy.
Right, right. Good is a value bestowed on an externality, right? Like I say if something's good in my life as it comes in from the external. I don't tell myself I'm good. I evaluate if a behavior pattern has served me well, right? Like, yeah, exactly. Like if I see somebody do something, I'm going to tell them that was a good, you know, thing that you did. If they come up to me and say I'm good, it's like what? Yeah. You know? Yeah, but that seems to be the whole game in institutional think, right? Like we're going to go to war with those bad guys. Or
that's the whole election process, is someone saying I'm better than that guy.
Right. And the people that I do find to be good are people that say, I'm flawed. I'm equally good and bad. I'm just trying to...
This is who I am. You decide if I'm good.
Right. I'm trying to walk that tightrope, you know, and I've fallen off many times, you know, but this is my tightrope walk, you know, and the process is of value, right? Like learning how to discern good from bad is of value, right? As opposed to the proclamation of good versus evil constantly, right? It just, I think the noise overwhelms the signal. if somebody keeps talking about, you know, the bad guy. It's like, I don't know, things are more nuanced than that, you know? I'm sure that there are people that are acting out of malevolence in the world at whatever level of society, you know, socioeconomically. But I would contend that for every one of those, there's probably somebody who's acting out of their, you know, goodness as well.
Oh, for
Right?
sure. Those people just don't end up on the news. So, you know, we don't know about those people.
Right. 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 Yeah, I've heard like we should have a channel called The Good News.
Right.
You know, like so and so's, you know, cat was rescued from the tree, and so, you know, helped so and so get off of meth, and so, you know,
There's a whole subreddit called Uplifting News, which I like to check out.
oh, that sounds good. I've heard a great one. Remember, I told you about Akira the Dawn? I'll send you a link. But he has another album of Mr. Fred Rogers. Mr.
Oh,
Rogers.
nice.
Are you old enough?
He is a good person. Yeah, I remember Mr. Rogers.
So he has a whole album talking about him. And Mr. Rogers said that when he was a youngster, his mother sat him down and said, whenever there's a crisis, whenever there's an emergency, and you see
For the helpers.
you know, and you'll know, and you know that there will be hope. You know that there is hope. And that's beautiful, man.
Have you seen his speech that he made to some congressional group trying to?
Saw that. I saw that.
That's pretty good.
He was a special man. He had the ability to sit down and tell it how it is. And I mean, you had that staunch congressional, you know, money-minded guy, and he just said, "We're going to fund you." Like,
yeah, you got your money.
Yeah, you got your money, right? Congratulations, you got your money. Yeah, and he didn't hide behind sensationalism or I don't know, like the way that Mr. Rogers speaks man to man is as impactful as any orator I've ever seen. And you're talking about a guy who had a kids show. By all rationale, he should have just been a kind of goofball, you know, weirdo that wouldn't have great oratory charisma. And
right. He was not Pee Wee Herman.
No, right. He wasn't a caricature of himself, was he? He was a strong-willed, emotionally grounded, spiritually just a fortress of a man, you know? And he said some things in that speech that really resonated with me. He goes, you know, we've got all of these kids right now, and they're sitting in front of the TV bombarded by lights and sounds and these just way over the top, you know, cartoons. And, you know, we teach them about their own emotions and anger and, you know, how to tie their shoes and what they're feeling and how to get along with their siblings. And like, what a beautiful and necessary man, you know? And so I just, in my 33 years, I've come to realize that I potentially can be a voice to the malevolent and the disenfranchised and the mentally ill, because I've been all of those things. And I know that there's a way out. And I know that the conceptual framework that keeps people purchasing and imbibing, you know, purchasing toxic shit, imbibing toxic shit, and, you know, spouting toxic shit is a pattern that can be evolved out of, you know, and it takes, you know, takes fortitude and it takes courage and it takes time, but it really only takes honesty and the willingness to be, you know, honest with oneself and with the people around oneself. And I don't know, man, I think that can make magic happen, you know? And I mean, truth be told, I've been very lucky, and if it wasn't because of, you know, some of the circumstances in my life, I don't know where I would be, but, you know, the ocean really helped me a lot, and the mountains have really helped me a lot. And, you know, I hesitate to want to like make a business out of these kinds of callings, but they are a calling, you know, they are a part of me that is not going away, but only getting more deeply ingrained into my motivation for my life moving forward, you know?
Badass. You're a well-spoken dude, so I think you're well equipped to share your experiences with people.
Well, I appreciate that. And I hope to more so, you know, I've talked on a few of my podcasts about my time in Santa Cruz and kind of going nuts and coming out the other side of that. And, you know, I can go into greater depth at another time, but, you know, I think we run into good people along the path. You know, I met you during that time, you know, and I think that goodness comes where goodness goes. I wrote this poem one time. Goodness conceives goodness and goodness grows. Like, you know, goodness is a real function in the world. Like it is maybe a second order validation or judgment, but when you do something good, you know it, you feel it. Your serotonergic system tells you, your dopaminergic system tells you. And I think that finding the strength of character to realize that doing good things matters and manifests more positivity and more goodness in the future is enough to hold on to the good life, you know, and to build a good life. And I want that for everyone, man, because I have seen people go down the wrong path. I went down the wrong path for a time, and it just picks up speed, man.
We'll shoot one podcast at a time. You're getting your voice out there.
Yes, sir. Well, hey, I appreciate your time, and you know, I'm honored to have you as a friend, Christian. It
Likewise, thank you.
You know, to be able to have these conversations, and let's do it again. Let's do another one. Maybe
Sure.
maybe when you're up and at 'em, we can talk. But certainly next season skiing is a move. And in the meantime, bro, if you want to get together in Bend or you know, host us in Gardnerville, we'd be more than happy.
Once all the insanity settles down, game on.
Yeah, well, that's presupposing that's you know, a possibility. No, I don't know. Well, hey, I love you, bud, and thank you very much for taking the time. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Yeah, man. Take care.